in what ways do you feel Buddhism has adapted itself to the reality of evolution? Do you see an evolutionary Buddhism emerging at this point? A Buddhism that embraces a kind of ultimately progressive, sort of not merely cyclical, but progressive developmental kind of framework for not just the individual, but for the whole kind of cosmic reality, including our human psychology and human nature, like the notion that human nature itself could evolve, because it did evolve. It came from, we didn't start the way we are now, and we're not going to end the way we are now, and things like that we're really moving somewhere, as opposed to kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like, is that, and pardon my ignorance, maybe that is in the tradition in somewhere. I'm sensing it wasn't. And
Buddhism went through its own, evolution over thousands of years, and it began with that notion of getting from here to there, from samsara, this world, to nirvana, the other shore. But Mahayana Buddhism and then non-dual Buddhism, Vajrayana, Diamond Path Buddhism, Tantrayana, etc., developed, partly hand in glove with Hindu Tantra and non-dualism and Vedanta and so on. And so we understand that it's beginningless and endless, but that's not a problem, because I don't know. Let me put this as outrageously and clearly as possible.
Great.
When I awoke, everything was at peace. It didn't have to be pacified. Okay? I'll stand behind that. Mm-hmm. Everything is already perfectly at rest. Again, at the origin of all things. In the changeless, in the immutable, empty, but luminous axis of the turning wheel. Therefore, the wheel can keep turning, no problem, when one is that centered.
Right, and I'm totally with that, but I'm saying that doesn't sound like an evolutionary perspective. That sounds
absolutely
like a kind
not.
Of... Right.
Absolutely not. I don't know what it is. But I'm asking, what would an evolutionary Buddhism be? I'd like to get to that. I'm interested.
Well, again, like from this point of view of kind of evolutionary spirituality, I think what an evolutionary Buddhism might be would be perhaps considering that some of our understandings of what this conditioned relative world is, maybe we're rooted in ancient worldviews that we maybe could leave behind and start to realize that what we think of as the cyclical relative samsaric dimension might actually be itself a progressive, evolving, and ultimately redeemable kind of dimension that might really change and be changing.
It absolutely is, but I think change is kind of, as you're talking about it, that sounds very incremental, and I don't think it's a transformation that we really need to have in evolutionary Buddhism. It's a transmutation, it's a leap. And we have to realize that the base metal of human nature is the gold of Buddha nature, not transform it by polishing it for a long time. And that's where samsara is realized as nirvana. That's the higher teachings of Buddhism, and nobody will argue with that. Whether it's true or not, they might argue, but that is the higher teachings.
Yeah,
that is the teachings of, Vajrayana Buddhism and Zen Buddhism and so on, non-dual Buddhism. And that this world is an altar, and all the beings on it are the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, gods and goddesses, if you want to talk theistic, no problem. Yeah. So I would ask again, what would an evolutionary Buddhism look like or offer or add?
Well, this is interesting. We're going down this road, but I'm game to go. It's a great question. So, okay, what I would say about this, and I'm not a Buddhist, so my agenda isn't creating an evolutionary Buddhism per se. But if I would
say evolutionary spirituality,
but if I would say what I see as the difference between maybe what we're calling evolutionary spirituality and what we might call broadly traditional mysticism or traditional transformative spirituality, it has to do with this. See, I would say that traditional transformative or mystical spirituality in its nature is about awakening to that primordial, timeless, changeless ground, embodying that completely in the world. And see, if we talk about this kind of what seems to be the new axial age, or the new turn of the Dharma wheel that I'm seeing, is that there seems to be a a new kind of awakening that's happening, to where what one's awakening to isn't only the timeless, changeless, primordial, original nature, but it's like what we might call the creative, evolutionary dimension of divinity that is this surging creative process that is not, because there's some way in which I feel anyway, and even in the Mahayana and Vajrayana and traditional kind of conceptions, there's some way in which, like, life in the world, the creative process, the potential for, transformation, evolution of the world, and the perfecting of the world is not, it's still somehow always seen as a kind of junior or lesser or lower thing than the realization of the timeless, changeless perfection. And there's some way in which sort of timeless, changeless, primordial perfection is preferred in some way over.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Over, like, profound, surrender to the creative process itself, which could be.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think that would be the bias of those who are more into the Dharmakaya, which is the timeless, changeless, empty, primordial, and ignoring the Rupakaya, or the world of form and the energy, creativity, as you called it. For example, in Zen, first you have to pass the Dharmakaya koans, then you have to, grok or grasp empty shunyata. Then you have to go through a kind of back into the world, getting to Nirmanakaya koans, about how you tie your shoelaces and so on. And I think that's where, let me just say once more to put it in English, rather than talking about Dharmakaya, Nirmanakaya koans and fancy words.
No, you're being really clear. Go ahead.
A deeper understanding of the non-dual traditions of the East would be that there's no difference between the sacred and the mundane, and the true master or the awakened one is equally at home in the entire spectrum.
Right.
And there's no difference between the sacred and the mundane from that point of view. That each of us is the bridge between heaven and earth, or the sacred and the mundane.